Cindy is my wife. She's been out of touch for a decade now. I don't even know if she's still alive. I've been looking for her nonstop without any leads. You're the first real clue I've got. If you know anything about Cindy, anything at all. The lady seemed all flustered, like she was churning over a bunch of things in her head. Then, something seemed to click for her. My wife, who ran our watch repair shop with me, went missing 10 years back. One day, I went to this fancy mansion for an on-site repair job. The lady of the house says, about this. As she handed me a clue about my wife, I started to feel dizzy. No sooner had she said that, the lady went to fetch something. What she brought back was a smartphone. She left this behind. I stared at the phone she passed to me. No doubt about it, it was Cindy's. After 10 long years, I'd finally come across something of Cindy's. I could picture Cindy laughing away on that phone. My heart was racing so bad, I nearly blacked out for a second. I was so worked up, I could have keeled over right then and there. Name's Bobby Thompson, just turned 45 this year. I run a small watch repair shop, scraping by. The shop's full of old school timepieces. Folks come in, but not many buy. Used to make a living selling watches. These days, everything's gone digital. My shop doesn't carry any of that newfangled stuff. I kept on selling grandfather clocks and wall clocks. To me, a proper clock has got to have hands pointing to the time. It's kind of like a belief I've got. Might be a bit set in my ways, but I can't stand seeing those old TikToks die out. Makes me happy when someone who thinks like me buys a clock. That's why I'm so particular about it, because I'm so picky. I can't make ends meet just selling clocks. So I had to rethink my business. I still sell clocks, but now I focus on fixing up old ones. Doesn't matter how ancient they are. If I can save them, I want to honor the owner's feelings. That slow and steady work keeps those TikToks ticking. Changed the shop's name to a repair place and started taking orders. Wall clocks are even making a comeback as vintage furniture. That's a good thing. I try to spread the word about taking care of old clocks and meeting customers' needs. Don't have a ton of orders, but they keep coming steady, keeping me busy enough. Every time I see a customer's face light up, I know I'm not barking up the wrong tree. Some folks got where I was coming from, but the one who really got me wasn't around anymore. That was Cindy, my dear wife. For some reason, Cindy up and vanished on me. It's been 10 years since she went missing. Cindy disappeared without a trace, just like that. That day, she was her usual self. I waved goodbye to her smiling face, like always. It was just when the business was hitting a rough patch. Cindy was listening to me with an open mind. I see. If that's what you think, I'm okay with it. It might be for the best, right? I want to take care of customers who cherish old clocks. That's just like you. I love that stubborn side of you, Bobby. You've got the skills. I want you to do work that makes the most of your talent. It was because of Cindy's support that I decided to focus on clock repair. Leave the shop to me. I'll be here. You can go out for on-site repairs, no problem. Oh, Cindy, thank you. From now on, let's divide the work to make a living. I can't forget Cindy's smiling face at that moment. I truly felt that Cindy was my support. The day Cindy disappeared, I had no appointments and was relaxing at home when she happily invited me out. A friend of mine has an old grandfather clock, and they invited us to come see it. Do you want to go? I hear it's quite an antique. I was definitely interested, but I thought there might be a job request in the meantime. That sounds nice. You should go take a look. Sorry, but I'll stay at the shop in case we get any calls. What? You're not coming? It's such a good opportunity. You don't have any appointments today, right? Let's go see it together. If only I had gone with Cindy then. I still had a feeling a job might come in. Cindy was disappointed, but went along with my decision. She smiled at me as I stayed behind to mind the shop. All right then, I'll have some tea and come back early. Those were Cindy's last words. I didn't know her friend's contact information. She didn't answer my calls. I had a gut feeling something was wrong, so I called everywhere I could think of. There were no leads at all. The next day, I filed a missing person report with the police. They asked about Cindy's appearance when she left. I heard nothing from the police. I made posters and put them up around town. I handed out flyers and looked for witnesses every day. No information about Cindy came in. I was overcome with sadness. Where could she have gone? Since then, I've been running the shop alone. It's been 10 years now. Time has passed mercilessly. That day, I had received a repair request. The house I was heading to was a grand mansion. Surprisingly, they wanted me to repair a grandfather clock that was over 100 years old. Apparently, it had been cherished since their grandfather's time. I could tell it was a clock they were very attached to. I had never worked on such an old clock before, but I wanted to fulfill the client's wish. When I arrived, a woman who seemed to be the lady of the house came out. "Welcome. Thank you for coming. We appreciate your help. It's such an old clock. We're not sure if it can be fixed. Thank you for your request. Let me take a look at the clock first." I was shown to the living room where I saw the clock. It was an old-fashioned cuckoo clock that showed its age. About this clock, how long has it been since it stopped working? Well, it's been quite a while. I think it's been about 10 years since it last worked, so it was still working until 10 years ago. That's remarkable. Such an antique clock was still serving its purpose until recently. Why did you decide to have it repaired now after it's been stopped for so long? The woman fell silent. After a while, she began to speak as if lost in thought. This clock holds special memories for me. I can imagine. It must have witnessed a long history of this house. Yes. I've grown up seeing this clock since I was little. I loved my grandfather dearly. Every time I look at the clock, I remember him. I used to watch the cuckoo pop out with my grandfather, and we'd check the time together, delighted. So it's a precious clock filled with memories of your grandfather, is that right? Well, that's part of it, but the woman hesitated there. Actually, there's something else. Something else. Isn't it because of her grandfather's connection? Is there another reason she wants it working? Then the woman began to share something shocking. Actually, this clock stopped working when my friend disappeared. What? According to her, her friend had come to see the clock. Apparently, the clock was still working at that time. After the friend left, it suddenly stopped working. Since then, there's been no word from the friend. I recently thought, what if she stopped the clock? So I felt that if I could get this clock working again, somehow I might be able to meet my friend again. Wait a minute. She said the clock stopped about 10 years ago. As I thought about this, I got goosebumps. Could that friend be? Pardon me for asking, but is your friend's name Cindy? The moment I said this, the woman was surprised. What? How do you know? I was surprised too. My hunch was right. Cindy had come to visit this friend. My mind went blank. It seemed impossible to accept the truth right away. But I couldn't just stand there. I calmed myself down and spoke to the woman. Cindy is my wife. We've been out of touch for 10 years now. I don't even know if she's still alive. I've been searching for her all this time without any leads. You're the first clue I've got. If you know anything about Cindy, anything at all. The woman seemed flustered, like she was thinking about many things at once. Then, something seemed to dawn on her. Please wait a moment. Saying that, the woman went to fetch something. What she brought back was a smartphone. She left this behind. I stared at the phone she handed me. No doubt about it, it was Cindy's. After 10 years, I'd finally come across something of Cindy's. I could picture Cindy laughing as she talked on that phone. My heart was racing so bad, I felt dizzy for a second. I was so worked up, I could have collapsed right there. If only she hadn't forgotten this, I could have contacted her. So Cindy forgot her smartphone there. That's why she couldn't contact me either. I tried calling Cindy. I wondered why I couldn't get through. If she didn't have her phone, There was no way to talk, I guess. I'm so sorry. I should have answered the phone. I could have talked to you, her husband. You must have been so worried. The woman seemed genuinely remorseful. Did Cindy leave any message for you before she left? The woman tried hard to recall that day. And sure enough, she remembered something. Come to think of it, that day I told her about a shop that sells antique clocks. She was excited and said she wanted to go right away. She might have gone there. I wanted to know Cindy's whereabouts from 10 years ago. I got the information about that shop from the woman. After that, I started working on the clock I was called for. It took some time, but I got it working again. The woman was overjoyed, tears in her eyes. She kept staring at the clock as it started ticking again. You're persistent, aren't you? I can feel it. Your feelings for your wife. This clock has started moving again. I'm sure you'll find your wife too. I hope so. I really hope that's true. Thank you for the information. It was 10 years ago though. I'm not sure how helpful it can be. I had absolutely no leads until now. Just having some hope is a big deal for me. I thank deeply to express my gratitude. The woman entrusted me with Cindy's smartphone. I wish you the best of luck. Thank you. I'll keep in touch. Leaving the woman's house, I headed straight for the shop she told me about. The shop was about a 30-minute train ride away. Inside the shop, there were indeed antique clocks. The shop seemed to still be in business. As I peeked in, the owner promptly approached me. Welcome, an older gentleman. I wondered if he was here 10 years ago too. Actually, I have something I'd like to ask about. I explained to the owner why I came to this shop and asked about what happened 10 years ago. It's an old story now, so you probably don't remember. But then, the owner started telling me something surprising. It might be about the woman who had an accident. Accident? Yes. There was a female customer who was happily looking around the shop. She was in her 30s. When I spoke to her, she asked a lot of questions. She said if she found a clock she liked, she'd definitely want to buy it. I described Cindy's features from that time to the owner. So, what about this accident? She said she'd come back and left the shop. Right after that, she was hit by a car right in front of the store. What? That woman? The owner nodded. It was a traffic accident. He said the woman didn't move at all. She was taken away by ambulance. I remember it clearly because it was so shocking. That's all I know. I don't know what happened to her after that. I was stunned. Did Cindy die? Is that why she never came back? I didn't want to accept such a thing. I wanted to believe Cindy was alive somewhere. Grasping at straws, I asked the shop owner, where was the woman taken? I don't know. Probably to the nearest emergency hospital. The owner told me about a nearby emergency hospital. I couldn't contain my eagerness. I'm going there right now. The owner shook his head at me. I understand how you feel, but you should calm down first. It was 10 years ago. I think it's better if you go tomorrow. The owner was worried about my state. His words helped me come to my senses. You're right, I'll come back another day. The owner gave me a smile. To me, it looked like he pitied me a little. That night, I had a terribly frightening dream. Cindy was running towards me when she was suddenly hit by a car. Tears flowed as I saw Cindy's changed appearance. I woke up drenched in sweat. Was this the same scene from 10 years ago? The next day, I visited the hospital I'd been told about. I wanted any information that could lead me to Cindy. When I talked to the reception, luckily, the doctor who handled the case was still at the hospital. Cindy had indeed been brought to this hospital. Finally, I could face the truth. My heart was racing. The doctor greeted me politely and made time for me. He took me to a consultation room and talked to me. And so, I learned some unexpected facts. Cindy had surgery and survived. At that moment, I felt tears running down my cheeks. Cindy was alive. I'm glad I kept believing. But then, why hadn't I heard from her? If she was alive, she should have been able to come back. The doctor sincerely addressed my questions. His explanation made everything clear. At that time, Cindy had no way to identify herself. She didn't have her smartphone or any ID with her. They decided to ask Cindy when she regained consciousness. But even after regaining consciousness, Cindy couldn't answer. The shock of the accident had caused her to lose her memory. She couldn't remember who she was at all. I see, that's why Cindy couldn't come back. Then, she might have forgotten about me too. Cindy was discharged from the hospital. For physical and mental rehabilitation, she was then placed in a facility. The doctor said if her memory hadn't returned, she should still be in that facility. He told me about that facility. I decided to go there with a photograph. That facility was even further away. I decided to take some time off work. I felt I needed time to face Cindy thoughtfully and deliberately. I found the facility soon enough. I stood in front of the facility, hesitating. Cindy is here. If I meet Cindy, it'll be after 10 years. I was scared. If she sees me as a stranger, there's nothing I can do. First, I need to create a situation where I can face Cindy. At the facility's reception, I showed the photo I brought and asked if this woman was here. Would they recognize Cindy from a 10-year-old photo? It was a photo of us together. Cindy had wanted to take it, feeling affectionate that day. Who knew this photo would come in handy here? The receptionist immediately recognized Cindy. Looking surprised, she took the photo from me. After a while, a woman introducing herself as the director appeared. "Welcome. May I have a word with you?" I was shown to a meeting room. I thought I'd be able to see Cindy right away. The director explained she wanted to hear my story first before deciding how to proceed. I decided to ask the director what I wanted to know, straight out. "Is Cindy here?" "Cindy? Is that her name? We call her May here." "What's your relationship to her?" "I'm Cindy's husband. I've been searching for her for 10 years. She suddenly went missing, and every day since has been unbelievable. I finally traced her here. I want to see Cindy." The director returned the photo she was holding to me. She looked at my face and thought for a while. "The woman in the photo is indeed her. I believe you're her husband. I understand your situation, but please give us some time to consider her future." "What? Why?" "Her husband has come to take her home." The director began to speak apologetically. "I believe you're her husband. It's not that I don't trust you. However, after 10 years, she's adapted to life here. We need time. She won't be able to accept this news right away. You'll tell her about this, right? How much time do you need?" "I don't know. We need to talk to her and confirm her wishes." I was stunned. There's no way Cindy, who was so fond of me, would say she doesn't want to come back. "Anyway, we'll talk to her and contact you later." With trembling hands, I gave the director my business card. I insisted that she contact me anytime. The director carefully accepted my card and made another request. "I returned the photo earlier, but if it's all right, could we keep it? It might help her remember. You're the husband who loved her, after all." "Of course. I hope it helps." I handed the photo back to the director. Her hands were trembling too at that moment. Believing I'd hear from them, I left the facility. It was a few weeks later. I got a call from the facility on my smartphone. I immediately slid my finger across the screen. I heard the director's voice on the other end. "Sorry to keep you waiting. Is now a good time to talk?" "Yes." "What happened? If possible, could you come here as soon as you can?" "That's fine, but how is Cindy doing?" "Well, she's expressed a desire to meet you." I thought, great, I can finally meet and talk with Cindy after so long. My heart was dancing with joy. However, the director's tone wasn't very upbeat. "We'd like you to come here and talk to her, but please be careful." "What do you mean?" "She's very nervous right now. We want her to return to her old self too. But if you say something that upsets her, even slightly, she might become stubborn. Please avoid pushing her too hard. Above all, respect her wishes." The director was asking me to approach this carefully. Her words made me think. The Cindy I'm about to meet isn't the Cindy from before. She's a Cindy who's forgotten me. So, I need to seal away my memories of the old Cindy too. If I reunite with Cindy, I'm sure I'd explode with joy at seeing her. But for the current Cindy, that might even be pressure. I understand. I'll face the current Cindy calmly. I'd like to come tomorrow if possible. Would that be all right? The director gladly agreed to my proposal. The next day, I headed to the facility early in the morning. I hadn't slept well the night before. I felt conflicted. My desire to see her was overwhelming. Would I be able to talk to Cindy properly? When I arrived at the facility, the director greeted me. We walked to the meeting room, and the director stopped. She peered at my face as if checking my expression. "Mr. Thompson, please don't strain yourself. Remember to stay calm." The director must have been worried about my state. Indeed, I was filled with intense emotions. "Yes. For Cindy's sake, I'll be careful not to confuse her." The director nodded several times while looking at my face. Looking worried, she opened the door. There was a woman sitting inside. She kept her head down, not looking up. "May, are you okay? Mr. Thompson is here to see you." The woman slowly raised her head and looked at me. It was Cindy. It really was Cindy. Tears naturally fell from my eyes. I'd finally reunited with the Cindy I'd longed to see. Cindy kept looking at me with puzzled eyes. It was the face of someone who had completely forgotten me. Prompted by the director, I sat down facing Cindy. Cindy seemed somewhat tense. "This is Mr. Thompson I told you about. Do you remember anything at all?" Cindy kept looking at me without saying anything. A moment of silence followed. It was Cindy who broke that silence. "Excuse me, could you tell me your first name, Mr. Thompson?" I looked at the director's face. The director smiled. "It's Bobby." "Bobby?" Cindy frowned. She stared at a fixed point. After a while, she asked me another question. "What's my real name?" Cindy Thompson. "So that means I was your wife, right?" Cindy didn't seem to have any recognition. An indescribable sadness overwhelmed my heart. But now wasn't the time to show my emotions. I was holding back my tears with all my might. "That's right. You were my wife. We ran a clock shop together." "A clock shop? Did we sell clocks in our store?" "We were surrounded by clocks every day." "You loved clocks too." "Me? When I look at clocks now, I don't feel anything special." Cindy showed no interest when hearing about clocks. Cindy's consciousness had completely changed. Just before the accident, Cindy loved antique clocks and was looking forward to her next visit to the shop. She's not that Cindy anymore. I felt that reality hit me again. "Did you see the photograph?" "Yes. It's a photo of you and me, right?" "I saw it. It certainly looks like we were close. I can see we were married." "That's right. We were married. And I've been searching for you all this time. I'm so moved to see you." Cindy seemed confused by my words. "Even if you say that, honestly, I don't feel anything. I thought maybe I'd remember something when I met you. But even seeing you, I don't feel any excitement. Seeing your happy face and tears, all I can do is feel confused." Saying this, Cindy lowered her eyes. The director gently embraced Cindy's shoulders and nodded several times, thanking her for agreeing to meet. "May, thank you. It's okay. Let's remember slowly. Today's meeting will surely connect to May's memories tomorrow." The first meeting with Cindy ended there. The director advised that any further meeting would be too much. "Mr. Thompson, I'm sorry. Let's help her regain her memories little by little. We mustn't rush. She'll definitely regain her memories someday." "You're right. I believe that too. Please continue to watch over her warmly. I was prepared for this from the beginning. It will take time." I decided in my heart to stick with it to the end. The next meeting was several weeks later. When I went to see her, Cindy wanted to meet me. Cindy said she had a request for me. "What is it?" "Well, could you take me to your house today?" Did she miss her own home? Does this mean her memory is coming back a little? No, that's not it. If she wanted to return to her own home, she would simply say she wants to go back home. Cindy probably wanted to see the house she lived in to try to regain her memories. Of course. Would you like to come? Yes, please. Cindy agreed to come with me to the house, accompanied by the watchful director. On the train, Cindy followed the passing scenery with her eyes. Surely, she must have seen the same view on the day of the accident. I hoped there would be even a small trigger for her memory. Then, we stood in front of the houses. Cindy gazed absent-mindedly at the exterior. This is the house you lived in. The shop is full of old clocks. Cindy stepped into the store on her own and looked around at the grandfather clocks on display. There really are only old clocks here. Yes, you loved them too. So I spent my days surrounded by these clocks, living with you. That's right. I opened the shop for clock repairs, and you were in charge of the store. So you looked at these clocks almost every day. Do you feel anything? Cindy stared intently at each grandfather clock. Tears fell from her eyes. Then, shaking her head, she showed me a sad face. I'm sorry. I can't remember. These clocks should mean something to me, right? I can't even remember that. This was my home, wasn't it? Her words sounded desperate. It felt like she was blaming herself. I was sad too. I had been hopeful. I thought if she came home, she might remember something. That didn't happen. What can I possibly do now? Just then, I remembered something. I recalled the words of Cindy's friend. She had told me something meaningful. Cindy had stopped the clock. So if the clock started moving again, we might meet Cindy. At the time, I had dismissed her words, but now they came back to me vividly. I knew there was no logical basis for this idea. But for some reason, I wanted to take a chance on those words. Actually, there's a clock I'd like you to see. Please come with me. Yes, I'd be happy to. The director smiled at Cindy's words and positively accepted my suggestion. I immediately contacted her friend. When I explained the situation, she was delighted. We took the train again and headed straight to her house. As we stood in front of her grand mansion, Cindy looked around in surprise. What an amazing house. This is your friend's houses. You came here that day. You came to see the antique clock in this house. I heard you were excited to see it. When I rang the intercom, she came out. She had tears in her eyes seeing Cindy after so long. It's been a while, Cindy. I'm so glad you're alive. Is that clock still working? I really wanted to show it to Cindy. She nodded happily. Of course it's working. You got it moving again, Cindy. We went into her house. In the living room, the grandfather clock was steadily ticking away. You came to see this. How do you feel? Does it bring back anything? Cindy stared at the clock and closed her eyes. She seemed to be listening intently to the sound of the hands. Just then, the cuckoo announced the time. At that moment, tears rolled down Cindy's cheeks. Tears kept welling up in Cindy's eyes. Surprised by this strange sight, I couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong?" Cindy started saying something surprising. I can see it. That day, I definitely came to see this clock. I stood in front of this clock, following the movement of the hands. The hands were ticking away accurately, like a heartbeat. Even though it's an old clock. What? You remember? Ignoring my surprised words, Cindy continued talking with her eyes closed. I was moved. Even though it's old, the clock keeps going. Yes, that's why I went to the shop they told me about. I definitely went there. Suddenly, Cindy fell to her knees and started crying out loud. I placed my hand on Cindy's shoulder. Thank you, that's enough. You've remembered so well. Feeling my hand, Cindy looked up. Her eyes were those of the Cindy I knew. Bobby, yes, you're Bobby. I'm sorry, I didn't realize. I'm so happy. I got to meet you. I'm sorry I couldn't come back for so long. Cindy hugged me as I was crouched down. I held Cindy tightly too. Welcome back, Cindy. You've come back after 10 years. Yes, it was a long journey, but I finally made it back. Cindy kept crying in my arms. The director silently watched us. Then she smiled, waved, and left. Cindy didn't want to let go of me. I thought to myself, as Cindy said, this was her long journey, and she safely returned to me. So Cindy should go straight home. I took Cindy, and we went home together. Cindy recognized it as her home again. With her memory back, she started remembering more and more, and Cindy gradually regained her daily life. There's no need to rush. We can take it slow. That's what I thought, until one morning. Cindy, who should have been sleeping next to me, wasn't there. I couldn't find her anywhere in the house. I thought maybe she had gone for a walk. Then, after a while, the phone rang. When I answered, the director started talking frantically, saying something unbelievable. "Mr. Thompson, Cindy suddenly came back here this morning." "What?" "Cindy is saying she's May." "What's going on?" I wanted to ask the same thing. Why did Cindy go back to the facility? It was completely out of the blue. I was dumbfounded. I rushed to the facility without delay. When I arrived, the director ushered me into the meeting room. Cindy was sitting there as before. This time, Cindy lowered her eyes as soon as she saw me. She was clearly reacting as if she recognized me. "Mr. Thompson is here. Please talk with your husband." Cindy immediately shook her head at those words. It was a clear expression of Cindy's will. "Why? Did something happen with your husband after you went home?" Cindy looked up at my face and the director's. "No, nothing happened." "Then why did you come back?" After a brief silence, Cindy began to speak quietly. "I'm May, not Cindy. The old Cindy is gone. Living with Bobby for a while made me realize that." "What do you mean? Did I do something to hurt you, Cindy?" "No, you're too kind. Too kind." I had lived with Cindy, who had returned, pouring out my affection just as before. Was that a burden for Cindy? I had been interacting with Cindy with honest feelings. While living with you, Bobby, I lost confidence. I wondered if this was right. Confidence in what? Whether I could love you. I lost my memory and lived here. Those 10 years apart were a long time. I had forgotten you for those 10 years. I was moved when I remembered you. But after a while, I felt uncomfortable. For 10 years, I was May. That's a part of me you don't know, but Cindy remembered herself. Isn't that good? No, 10 years changes a person. I can never go back to being the old Cindy. I felt that. Once I realized that, seeing you became painful. So, I'll stay here as May from now on. Cindy apologized to me deeply. Cindy's tears seemed like tears of regret. I returned a smile to Cindy. "I understand. It's okay for you to be May. You can live here as May." Cindy looked at my face with surprise. Maybe the old Cindy is gone. If so, that's fine too. I'm not hung up on it. But I believe that someday you'll be reborn as Cindy and appear before me again. Cindy, no matter how much time passes, no matter what happens, my love won't change. Even if you've thrown away the old Cindy, I'll be waiting for you to become a new Cindy. I nodded to the director and left the room. Without looking back, I left the facility. The tears I had been holding back flowed endlessly. It felt like this might be my final parting with Cindy in this life. Some time passed after that. I was busy with clock repairs as usual every day. That day's work lasted until night. Feeling tired, I headed home. That's when I saw it. The lights were on in the shop. Did I forget to turn them off? I hurried back to check. The door was open too. That can't be. I'm sure I locked the door when I left the shop. An unexpected person came out of the shop. "Welcome back, Bobby." "How why?" "Well, the shop needs someone to mind it, right?" "Silly." Cindy hugged me with all her might. I gently embraced Cindy too. I've been reborn as Cindy. After all, I want to be with you. No more words were needed. Our time had started ticking again.